It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I'm Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're not watching over here already. Also, go follow us on the listening platforms, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find us. Follow us there. And on either YouTube or those listening platforms, if you go to the description, the top link is going to be year 7 of Rocking Around the 412. It's our Pittsburgh fundraiser for Christmas. And we've helped provide children Christmas presents for the last 6 years, raised over $36,000, partnered with the East Rochester Salvation Army, as well as providing with children with their own individual gifts for individual families. So if you're interested in that, go check out the link. We got a GoFundMe link in the description. It's going to be here from now until December. Already $600 this year, but we want to raise as much money as possible to help as many kids as possible. So go check that out. This is a Steelers show. Training camp officially over. Prepping for the Bills game this weekend. It's officially football season. We're here. We're talking about games. It's exciting. Sad the training camp's over, but you know what that means? It just means we're getting closer to the real stuff.
Yeah, another preseason game. By the time you guys are watching or listening to this, will be tomorrow. Buffalo had a joint practice with the Bills, which Tomlin loved. This is going to happen probably every year now. I mean, he was juiced up about it. He has a great relationship with Sean McDermott, the head coach of the Bills, so I know that that's probably something that they're going to want to continue to do, as long as it lines up that they play each other in the preseason, which has been a thing.
Well, I might be ignorant in this, but is that something that happens all that often with the Steelers in years past, that they have a joint practice? Like, I don't remember them ever doing it.
So it obviously would be the team that you are playing that week of the preseason that you do a joint practice with. The Steelers have not been very common with doing them. I think they had one with the Lions like years ago. But this is the first time that they've had one for a while. And hearing Tomlin or Allen talking about it and seeing Tomlin talk about it in his press conference, I feel like it's going to be a thing going forward. And also, it was the first one that Allen covered, and he was like super juiced up about it, the way that it was kind of just like a different format. You kind of got to have your eyes everywhere because like 7 shots are going on at the same time, like Steelers offense versus Buffalo D and vice versa. They're going on and off the end zones the exact same time. So it's like hard to pay attention to what's going on and stuff. So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens in this preseason game. But with training camp wrapping up, man, I will say, Wood got out of it with any like really major injuries. Unfortunately, Braylon Arnold, who was competing for a slot position along with Beanie Bishop, did go down. Looks like that is pretty significant, obviously, with him being waived / injured. So I don't know what that was. It's unfortunate for him. Maybe he was going to carve out a role for himself on the 53-man roster here. But other than that, I mean, been pretty fortunate throughout training camp here to not have like a major situation happen, like with, Cory Trice last year tearing his ACL when we had high hopes for what his rookie season could be, at least in certain packages. Speaking of, man, the way that he's come on strong here, like Dante Jackson's kind of been sitting out just because he doesn't necessarily need the reps. And it's been Cory Trice running with the ones a lot. And man, he's really come on. I feel like there is certainly a role for him on this team. I think he's clearly the CB3 for them. I think he's going to play in dime. Like, I'm excited for what Cory Trice is going to be. You know how much I loved him when he was coming out of the draft. And I just feel like he now, because of the Steelers, whether intentionally or unintentionally, not really blocking him, like other than getting Dante Jackson. And obviously they brought in Cam Sutton, but he's going to start with the suspension, left it open for Cory Trice to kind of carve out a role for himself like this. So it looks like it's going to come to fruition. He's going to get a shot here early in the season. Look good in that first preseason game. We'll see how it carries over.
I love it. I mean, this is a guy that, going back to last year, we both thought if it wasn't for injury, he would be drafted way higher. I mean, our boy DB had him as a top 100 player on his board. He's taken in the 7th round. I think that if this hits for the Steelers, it's a major steal. It's a home run. And it's really fitting the mold of what they're trying to build. I mean, we talked about that mold all of last season, too, whenever the draft happened, drafting guys like Joey Porter Jr., bringing a guy like Patrick Peterson and drafting Cory Trice, like trying to build these big, long cornerbacks on the outside. And that's something that I don't think that they've had recently before that, at least not a ton of, and not building their entire room around it. So if he's able to build that, and you have him and Dante Jackson and Joey Porter Jr. all fitting that mold. I think that's going to work really well. They have a clear vision for what they want from their cornerbacks. And I think that there's an opportunity there that they can have a really, really good cornerback room if everything goes to plan. And Cory Trice coming to fruition this season is a big part of that, because we had no idea what to expect. We saw him a little bit in camp, and then the injury happened. And so last season, you were completely blind to what Cory Trice was. And now this season, it was up to him to be able to prove to Steeler fans, and more importantly, the Steelers, why he deserves to be around and why he deserves to have a roster spot and why he deserves to be in the 2 deep at that position. I think that he's done that and more. I think that even in the limited time you saw him in the game last week, he already made an impact, blowing up that screen play last week. I'm excited and urgent to see what he can do up against the Bills this week and continuing in the preseason into the season. I think that him being in the position that he has and taking advantage of it has really helped the Steelers figure out their cornerback depth and feel a lot more comfortable about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's certainly one of the things that I'm excited to see. I mentioned briefly in there Beanie Bishop. I didn't think that he was very good in their preseason opener. And now with Grayland Arnold going down, I'm curious to see how, Beanie bounces back in week 2, especially against this Buffalo Bills offense. I don't know how long their starters are going to play, but anytime you're going against Josh Allen, despite the fact I know there's a lot of turnover in that receiving room, but I'm a Curtis Samuel fan. Khalil Shakir is a good player. Keon Coleman probably not going to line up in the slot, so I don't know how much Beanie would see of him anyway. But he's going to get tested, I think, in this game, and we'll see how that works out for him. Definitely excited to see that. Edge 4, very much up for grabs after Marcus Golden retired. Jeremiah Moon, Kyron Johnson, even DeMarvin Leal, I guess, because of him trimming down at 275, really not playing inside anymore, strictly rushing off the edge, competing for that spot. Like, I'm curious to see if they would even keep a 4th outside linebacker, or if it would just be DeMarvin Leal as kind of the 4th edge rusher. I think that's certainly a path they could go. Inside linebackers, like Cole Holcomb, still not spotted, so you got to assume at this point he's probably going to start the year on the PUP list. Does that open the path for both Mark Robinson and Tyler Medikevich to make the roster? If it's only one of them, I lean Medikevich because of the special teams, but at the same time, Mark Robb has played ahead of him in defensive snaps. So it's kind of like I'd probably rather have Mark Robinson for like actually doing the job of an inside linebacker, but
Right.
I'd rather have Dirty Red as the special teams guy. So like, how do you balance that if it's only one roster spot?
Yeah, that's going to be tough for the Steelers to figure out. Cole Holcomb not coming back, that's a blow. That really leaves your depth at middle linebacker in question. I feel like at least it's going to be tested, because you can't rely on anybody to stay healthy the entire season. If Patrick or Landon Roberts goes down, you're going. I mean, first guy up is Peyton Wilson, and I'm sure he's going to.
And we love Peyton, but he's a rookie.
And we love Peyton, but he's a rookie. We haven't seen him in we've seen him in game action, but we haven't seen him in regular season game action against starters. And we saw what he did in preseason game action. While there were some high of highs, you also saw some low of lows with Peyton Wilson. He's got to figure it out still. Like we said, he's a rookie. Mark Robinson, when he came into the league, new to linebacker, only played it 1 year. Still not the greatest linebacker, but between the two, between him and Medikevich, I agree with you. It's definitely Mark Robinson over him, but the Steelers looking at it, we know how much they value the special teams guys and how much versatility those guys have. With Medikevich playing special teams, like, is there a chance that they keep 5 inside linebackers because of the situation?
If you're including Holcomb?
Well, honestly, if you're including Holcomb on the PUP list and they keep Medikevich and Robinson.
Yeah, so right 4, and then Holcomb is the 5th. It's on the PUP, you're saying?
No. I'm saying keep the 5th, keep Medikevich and Mark Robinson and Peyton Wilson and Patrick Roberts.
I got you.
Open up the season, if those are your 5 linebackers, having 5 linebackers, because while I feel
Holcomb
like
would be a 6th,
while I feel like that may be a lot at the position, how much can you really rely on just your 2 starting linebackers? Like, don't get me wrong, I trust those guys. I love those guys on the defense. But when it comes to health and taking breathers, who are we going to want to replace them on the field? You got to have the legs to be able to do that. I don't think you can shoulder all of that on Peyton Wilson right now, who's probably going to get in certain aspects of the games regardless. if you have the depth behind it being very thin, I don't think that's going to be smart. But like you said, the Steelers have shown they value special teams. If you can play special teams, you're very much going to be on the roster. I think that's a position that they could open up with all 5 of those guys on the roster, just because of the uncertain. Like Cole Holcomb not coming back has very much made it complicated on the inside when it shouldn't have been, but now it is. So that's that. You mentioned DeMarvin Leal and Jeremiah Moon, that edge position. I think it's interesting keeping DeMarvin Leal as like an edge instead of just like a defensive tackle, even though he's not technically playing defensive tackle anymore.
He's down to 275.
Right. But the thing with him is, would you keep him as your 4th edge rusher if he's only going to be rushing like he's never going to drop back in coverage like other outside linebackers do, like other edge rushers that Steelers have right now. Like he will never do that. So are you going, or do you want to keep him as an edge rusher knowing that you're going to be losing that capability with one of your guys?
I think this conversation's honestly intertwined with the inside linebackers, because for that reason, along with special teams, I feel like you keep Jeremiah Moon on the roster, and I feel like Mark Robinson isn't on the roster because of that. Because you need that extra spot amongst the edge rushers for a guy that, because if you want, like Herbig is edge 3, like he can play special teams too a little bit. That's fine. Like, even though you'd probably like to dial that back with how much you're going to want him taking breathers or giving breathers to Watt and Highsmith. I just think you need another guy in that room that is also going to contribute on special teams. And I think that's Jeremiah Moon. Kyron Johnson's a little bit lighter too. Like he's probably too similar to Nick Herbig. He's had a great camp, probably makes the practice squad, but it's hard for me to envision them going 2 of that body type as the reserve edge rushers behind Watt and Highsmith. So to your point, for what I think DeMarvin Leal won't do for that room, I think you also have to keep Jeremiah Moon, and you can't keep Mark Robinson because of that.
And I think that makes total sense. But so I think really when now talking about DeMarvin Leal, if you're still like on the 53-man roster,
DeMarvin Leal's making the team. Like, for anybody that's
probably
listening
going
to
to make the team, which I got to give him credit for. Like this is someone that we talked about in the summer.
I don't even think on the bubble.
Could be he could be a cut candidate for not making the roster. Hadn't really shown anything in the years prior, but to his credit, he's worked his way into a roster spot. What do you think? Looking at that, do we think when the 53-man roster comes out, if Jeremiah Moon's on there, they've got 4 edge rushers, and you still have, even though he's not technically playing the position, DeMarvin Leal listed as a defensive lineman. Like last year, the Steelers kept 7 defensive linemen. I'm looking at the depth chart right now, and I see 8 guys who could make the roster. Which one is, if DeMarvin Leal's on there, which one is not making it? Like I look at, obviously you got your keepers of Hayward, Benton, Ogunjobi, and then I think that you have Leal, Monty Adams, Lowry, Logan Lee, and Isaiah Loudermilk that are all potential roster spots.
Yeah, it's Logan Lee that's not. He's going to make the practice squad. They'll keep 8. That's my prediction. I think everybody else has been that good. Like Dean Lowry wasn't able to practice for a while, but he's so good against the run. I had some concerns about the depth of this group after losing. I know that people are going to be like, it wasn't that big of a loss. But like with what they lost on the defensive line from last year to this year, I thought that they lost a little bit of pass rush juice. So I was kind of like, Armin Watts going to New England to me was a bigger deal than I think a lot of people thought that it was. But with what DeMarvin Leal has looked like this year as a pass rusher, with what Dean Lowry and Isaiah Loudermilk are doing against the run, Monty Adams, I think is one of the, I'm not going to say overall better because I really don't know looking around the league, but he's a very good backup nose tackle to have that can play in that 0-1 tech spot, even maybe out the 3. So I think that there's more depth there in the defensive line than I gave them credit for at the beginning of training camp. To their credit, you've had guys like DeMarvin Leal really separate. Isaiah Loudermilk's been good. Dean Lowry's been good in limited time. Monty Adams was awesome in that preseason game, and he's been strong all camp. So, and then the guys up top, like they're just not really getting the reps to say. Like Cam Hayward's not practicing a ton. Ogunjobi, that foot does look healthy for the first time, I feel like, as a Steeler. So that's good. And then Benton's been very good, but he's missed some time lately with that eye, but he'll be ready to go. So yeah, I'm very confident about that group.
Yeah, and you said something that I think is interesting. You mentioned how like not impressed with pass rush among those defensive linemen. The two players we talk like DeMarvin Leal, who we think is going to make a roster spot, and then Logan Lee, who is pretty much the opposite player that you said would probably make practice squad and not make the roster spot. Those are the advantages of having DeMarvin Leal is the pass rush. Like you're not gonna have Logan Lee rushing the pass. He's more of a run stuffer. Like that's kind of like where I envision him being. So like out of those two, if you were keeping one, I think DeMarvin Leal makes the most sense.
Well, when you're trying to build a room, especially the depth of it, I just think it makes sense to find guys that blend together, that skill sets kind of make everything that you want to have within the group, as opposed to a lot of identical players. So, if you got the DeMarvin Leal bringing the pass rush juice, you got Dean Lowry and Isaiah Loudermilk as kind of the run stuffers. You got what you're looking for, maybe not from one player having everything, but within the group, you have the skill set.
Yeah. Well, I think like adding to it too. Like if you're lacking in pass rush, it makes sense to keep the pass rushing guy.
Yeah. I mean, he's been that like I said, he's not even on the bubble for me. I don't think that he is for the team either, the way that they've talked about him. I think he's firmly on the 53-man roster. Yeah. I mean, if he takes a leap this year, like it looks like he has, that could be a real game changer. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. Code AT412 at checkout. Save yourself $10. Justin Fields design, Pat Fryermuth design, Patrick Queen, Joey Porter Jr., Minka, TJ. Pretty much all the big guns. You can go and find a t-shirt design for you. Save $10 when you do that. Let's switch to the offensive side of the ball. We're going to have a conversation about receivers, and yes, we're going to bring up that name when we talk about the receivers when we get there. But I want to start with the offensive line because we saw Troy Fautanu make his preseason debut and then get hurt. When we recorded last week, it was directly after the game. So we didn't know exactly what the nature of that injury was at that time. We now know it's a sprained MCL. What I find so interesting about this now, we're not going to see him for a while, maybe until the regular season opener. But if we're to believe Jerry Dulac, despite that injury taking place and not seeing him for a bit, he's going to be this team's starting right tackle. They're not going into this with kid gloves. What do you make of it? Like, are you buying into this actually being the case? Is Troy Fautanu going to go from, leaving his preseason debut with injury to being this team's starting right tackle when they go to Atlanta?
Well, it's interesting because I think that goes against the mold of what the Steelers have done in the past when it comes to rookies. We know that the Steelers don't like to play young guys early, at least overall. I feel like they've been like that. I mean, you saw it even last season looking at guys like Broderick Jones, Joey Porter Jr. They didn't come in as starters until several games into the season. So it goes against the grain. I kind of like it because I like Troy Fautanu as a talent. But at the same time, it would be surprising to me. And I'm not saying I don't believe Jerry Dulac if that is indeed the case for the Steelers. But I just think it goes against everything that they've shown us in the past of how they operate handling rookies, especially someone that's not going to be playing a lot up until the opening of the season. A rookie, how are you going to be able to just slide him in and expect him to start in game one? And he rightfully may be able to do that because of the talent that he has, but it would surprise me a lot personally because of what the Steelers have shown me in the past. Broderick Jones was your first round tackle last year. All the talk was, is he going to start? Is Dan Moore Jr. going to come out? Is Chooks going to come out? Is that going to be your tandem going into the season? And it was. Chooks and Dan Moore Jr. still were your starting tackles in game one. You didn't see Broderick Jones for several games into the season. So I think that the Steelers have shown in the past that they're not quick to play rookies if they don't have to. And I think that with an injury like this, I don't know that they would just throw him into the fire. I just think that goes against everything that I've seen from the Steelers and how they operate.
speaks volumes to me about how pro-ready Troy Fautanu was.
Yeah.
Because I think the difference with him and Broderick was just so much better, so much more advanced in his pass pro coming into the league. Like, Broderick very raw. And we kind of warned people about that. Like, man, he might not get there until year 3, not even year 2, Broderick, in terms of his pass protection and looking very polished. Troy was polished as soon as they drafted him. And he was an older prospect. So, you can kind of, I guess, feel like that would be the case. But yeah, it speaks volumes to me about where he is and where the team thinks he is. Zach Frazier, though, include him into this conversation because Nate Herbig's hurt right now. Don't know the severity of it. I'd be surprised, to say the least, if he suits up for this preseason game against Buffalo. Zach Frazier's probably to be running with the ones in this one. I thought that out of the two, he was better in the preseason opener, and I wanted to see him with the ones, not necessarily due to injury. It sucks that Nate Herbig's hurt right now. They certainly don't want to take a hit to the depth at the very least, even if we want Zach Frazier to be the starter. So, but on the positive note of that, Zach Frazier going to start this game, get a lot of run with the ones. I'm very encouraged, and despite what, the trend says about the Steelers and rookies, very good chance when they go to Atlanta, there's 2 rookies starting on that offensive line.
I was going to say, when it comes to Zach Frazier, my mentality of it goes out the window of everything that I just said about Troy Fautanu. And this is, I gotta preface, I don't want them to not play Troy Fautanu. I'm just saying, based off things I've seen in the past, it wouldn't surprise me if Troy Fautanu does not open up the season as right tackle. He very well may, and I would be excited for it if it was the case. With Zach Frazier, I think it's almost a need that he starts as your first string center, because I don't believe in Nick Herbig. I don't believe, or Nate Herbig, excuse me. Sorry. Still confused the two. I don't believe in Nate Herbig. Caught myself. I don't think that he should be the starting center. And despite, I know it said, and I listened to Alan say in the post-game show that they both had their struggles. Like Zach Frazier had their snap struggles in practice. He just didn't show it in the game. It was the opposite for Nate Herbig. I get that. But I still think that you are best suited at the center position with Zach Frazier there, despite him being a rookie. So I know that it goes against everything I said with Troy Fautanu, but I think that just because of the positional need and him, the talent gap with that player, I think that Zach Frazier is just a much better center. I am intrigued to see what he does against Buffalo this weekend and being able to see how he handles just getting those first team reps from snap one. I want him to do well, mainly because I think the Steelers need him to do well. I don't think that they would like going into the season unsure if Zach Frazier is going to be their first string center at some point in the season. I think that they would feel way more comfortable if that is answered from game one and they already know that that is the guy.
Nate Herbig has been one of the guys this training camp. And I'm not trying to fool anybody. I was only there 2 days. So most of the information that I get is from other people. Every now and then also, I don't know if other people are like me, sickos, that will actually watch some of the practices if they're up on YouTube, but they'll live stream some practices. So that is the majority of where I get my information. Nate Herbig is one of the players to me, kind of along with DeMarvin Leal, that was a pleasant surprise for most of it. So when I say this, it's not so much a knock on him. Like, to no fault of his own, I would absolutely be starting Zach Frazier at center. Because, again, no fault of his own, Zach Frazier just brings the functional athleticism that I think is required of the position to play within Arthur Smith's offense at that position. So for a guy to be able to get out in space the way that Zach Frazier does, Nate Herbig can't do that. That is, to me, the big difference between the two of them, and why, for me, it's not even a close call. Like we were talking about Troy, I would have had less of an issue with him not starting than Zach Frazier starting. Like, I would have, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
Zach,
you said that
to
right.
me,
Yeah, you said that
to
right.
me, it was, to me,
in my head, I had to make sure that came out right. And it did.
To me, Zach Frazier, if I could only pick one to start from day one, that maybe this is a better way of saying it, it would have been Zach Frazier over Troy Fautanu.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think that is going to, I think there's a good chance both of them start. I don't want to go against Jerry. Jerry's got the ultimate source. I'm not trying to have a source off with Jerry Dulac here. but it would shock me less if it was Dan Moore and Broderick than it would if it was Nate Herbig at center.
But if they do open up and they do have 2 rookies on it, I'm excited about that.
Absolutely.
I think that is a very talented offensive line. With
now the
with
question
Broderick and
is
Troy on the outside, I think that's the best tackle tandem that they've had in years.
The question is going to be how quickly can they gel because of that many young players on the offensive line. A complete contrast because you got those 3, which I would argue that Broderick's basically having a second rookie season now that he's on the left side.
Right.
So 3 rookie players basically at those spots. And then Isaac Seumalo and James Daniels, who are 2 very good vets at guard. It's just a complete contrast within there, but that's probably good. They can lean on those guys. I think there's going to be some growing pains early, and that's why I contested, with a lot of people that were upset about the way that the schedule kind of shook out. I wasn't upset about it because I was like, by the time we get to the second half of the schedule and we're playing all these divisional games, hopefully that very young offensive line is gelling by that point in time.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that it's a good thing to have. I mean, especially the 2 guys that you have in those vets, James Daniels and Isaac Seumalo, a very good guard duo for the Steelers. Very good veteran leadership for the offensive line. I don't think that the rookies that we have, plus Broderick, like pseudo rookie again, could have a better scenario as who is going to be next to all of them than the 2 guys they have right now. And that's why I feel so confident in this offensive line, or the potential of what this offensive line could be, as opposed to years past, because of how talented I know all these individual players are. Like I think back to you have to take it back several years when we're talking about like Pouncey still being here. And I mean, I wouldn't even say like Villanueva was ever that good. Like I'm thinking like years back when we were talking about like Killer B, but even before the Killer B era, as far as like good, solid, talented offensive line play. Like I think that they is a great potential with this offensive line, and they've done a good job of restructuring the offensive line, because for a while that was the huge weakness of this team. Despite what the offense was able to do outside of the line was giving up everything. I mean, thinking about the past 5 years has been terrible for offensive line. Basically killed the last couple of years of Ben's tenure with the Steelers. There was no shot to do anything with it. The fact that they're able to restructure it to what we have right now, and I mean, even looking past some of those starting positions, like guys like McCormick, guys like Spencer Anderson, I think is really versatile, really good. Like they've got depth behind their starters as well. I think they've done a great job at rebuilding it.
I think that's the thing, is there's been investment in it, whether that's draft capital, high draft capital, first and second round picks, or compensation free agency in Isaac Seumalo and James Daniels, who are both 2 top 20 paid guards in the NFL. So there's been a significant investment in that area. That's another spot to me, the offensive line, though, where there's like, it's pretty interesting when you look at the roster, like who's going to make the 53, because there's so many guys along the offensive line that I feel like are NFL capable guys. I mean, you could even see a guy like Spencer Anderson, maybe, who I feel like is an NFL player, get cut. Smitty from around the 412 here, and while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keek at Keek's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keek's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app The Cut, book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keek's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. Really tough decision looming there on the offensive line.
Realistically, well, I was just thinking realistically, in order for Spencer Anderson to knock it, because I don't think that they would cut McCormick or keep. I think he would be a 53-man roster guy.
Here's what's going to have to happen.
They would have to keep 10 guys.
Well, or Frazier wins the job at center, and they feel so good about McCormick and Anderson as backup guards that they trade Herbig.
Okay. That could also work out.
Yeah.
But assuming that they don't trade Herbig, they would have to keep 10 guys, which is kind of an outlier for a roster. But I will say I was looking at the 53-man roster last season, and there is a spot that could open up because last year to open up the season, the Steelers carried 2 punters. I don't know if you remember that, but Presley Harvin and Braden Mann were both on the 53-man roster. I know that caused a lot of ruckus on Twitter.com whenever they realized that a spot was being taken up by another punter. But if they want to figure it out, I think that Spencer Anderson is worth keeping. I think he's very versatile, can play multiple positions on the offensive line, is a very good depth piece to have. But like you said as well, Herbig, I think, is also worth keeping, but in the McCormick as well. I think there's several guys that are still worth keeping, which is why I don't mind them. If they decided to keep 10 guys, I would have no question about it at all.
I think best case scenario is you can move Herbig for a midday pick in the next draft. A mid pick. I mean, it's probably a mid pick, but get a mid-round pick out of Nate Herbig. I think that's a win, but obviously that's going to require Zach Frazier taking the full reign of that center job and feeling good about the guard depth that you have
this weekend.
Yeah, could see it as early as this weekend. The quarterbacks, we're going to see Russell Wilson. We don't know for how many series. Mike Tomlin said the starters would play 4 series, but you got to imagine Justin Fields will also get some run with the ones. But do you have any expectations for Russell Wilson? Are you just excited to see him in a Steelers uniform playing this game? Where are you at with the quarterbacks?
I don't know if excited is the right word. I'm intrigued to see Russell Wilson as a Steelers uniform. And don't get me wrong, I am excited, but I'm just more so intrigued to see what he's going to look like in game action for the Steelers. All I have for expectations for him is don't screw it up. Like, just keep it clean. I don't need anything flashy. I don't need anything to make me go, wow, this is the best quarterback in the league. I think if anything, as long as Russell Wilson keeps the offense clean, that is why he will be the starting quarterback, and that's what is going to give me confidence in him. As long as he takes care of the football, makes smart decisions. Like, I'm not expecting anything over the top for Russell Wilson, and that's not to say over the top of the defense. That's obviously just over the top and excitement of him. But I do want to see him. I'm intrigued by him. Then this is partially why I thought, while it was a realistic battle, and I did listen to, I think it was a couple days ago, your episodes of Steelers Afternoon Drive when Alan was driving home from Latrobe. I did hear him say that, like, the injury was mainly a farce, and it definitely was just to fuel an actual battle and give Justin more reps with the ones and actually make it more realistic competition. I want to go back to what I said a few weeks ago, where I felt like Russell Wilson and Justin Fields with this quarterback battle, that Justin Fields would have had to outplay Russell Wilson a ton, because not only was Russell Wilson the quote-unquote incumbent without being the incumbent, he wasn't here last year, but I feel like once they signed him, he was basically named the starting quarterback without being named the starting quarterback. So it was going to take a lot for him to be unseated. It was going to take not just Justin Fields playing extremely well, but also Russell Wilson not taking care of the football. We haven't really seen that yet. We haven't seen him play in action. So that's why I said, like, my really want from him as a player this weekend against the Bills is my expectation is to take care of the football and just run the offense smoothly. That's everything that I would want from Russell Wilson, at least right now in this preseason game. And that's why I think that with Justin Fields, while he's shown some good signs, I think that in the past couple months, he's grown a lot as a quarterback, a lot more than I would have expected, and has shown some good things. But at the same time, when it comes to the Steelers' perspective, Allen also did say they're just going to pick whoever is going to be smarter with the football. Whoever the safest quarterback is, they're going to play. And I agree with that. That's why I thought that Russell Wilson was always the safer quarterback, and that's why I always thought that he was going to be the starting quarterback for this team, unless Justin showed you he is immaculate. I don't think that there's really anything outside of Russell Wilson playing terribly that would change my mind going into the season. Like, if he came in, had some just like normal drives, didn't turn over the football, maybe scored a touchdown or two, I don't think that there's much that could happen outside of Russell Wilson absolutely falling apart that makes me think Justin Fields is going to start.
What I want to see with Russ, and it's more so the offense as a whole, is I don't know if you felt this way, but I think we had a conversation about it last week. Was I just thought like Arthur Smith called a really good game, like as good as you could call in the preseason, but the execution just wasn't there at times. I would love to see what this offense could do if they were actually executing the play calls. So I'm hopeful that we kind of get that same thing as last week from Arthur Smith, and just this time around they execute the plays better. But there is a level of excitement for me to just see Russ in a game action for the first time as a Pittsburgh Steeler. Still kind of feels surreal. Like every time that I see him out there wearing Steelers uniform, like I understand what he is at this point in his career. Don't get me wrong, but it's not hard for me, at least, to just think back to those Seattle days every time that I see him, because he was one of my favorite players in the league at that point in time. So it just kind of still feels odd to me that he is in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform, and Justin Fields being an Ohio State guy, huge fan of him too. It's insane to me how they've reshaped this quarterback room. So I'm excited to see both those guys in this second game and to see how that continues to shake out. All right, wide receiver. This is where we got to go now, and we're going to bring a name that's not currently on the roster into the conversation, of course. But behind George Pickens has been an open competition. I will say I feel like Van Jefferson has probably been the guy that has seized that opportunity. We talked a lot about Calvin Austin in the spring. That didn't translate for him as well once they put the pads on. It probably is, because you get into like an actual physical element now. That's not necessarily his trump card. And he just the momentum for him did not carry over from the spring. Roman Wilson got hurt first day in pads. Nobody else has stuck out. Quez Watkins obviously did what he did in that preseason opener. Yeah, that's going to get you in Tomlin's doghouse. Did have a couple nice practices, according to Allen. I don't know if it was enough to push for a 53-man roster spot. I think Scotty Miller would make the roster before him. But to be quite honest with you, the way that I see this wide receiver room shaking out is George, Van, Calvin, Roman, and I think they only keep 5 receivers. I don't think that 5th receiver is on the roster right now. Whether it is Brandon Aiyuk or somebody from the Texans roster, somebody from the Packers roster, cut down day, whenever it happens, or maybe that's where maybe you trade Nate Herbig to somebody for a depth wide receiver. 2 teams helping each other out. A team that needs a backup offensive lineman. Maybe that's the way you get a receiver. I just don't think that guy's on the roster right now. I don't see anybody outside that top 4 that is worth keeping on an NFL roster, but I think you need 5. So that's kind of where I'm at with the current state. Van Jefferson, I credit to him. Like, he looks the part for sure, putting in the work every day, catching 300 balls after practice off the jugs. I thought he had a pretty nice preseason debut. I think, like I said, I think he's looked the part so far through training camp. Will that translate? We got to see. As far as that outside receiver, I feel like we got to give a little bit of an update where the Brandon Aiyuk situation sits right now. Still has not signed in San Francisco. Still has not been traded to Pittsburgh. Those are the only 2 options. Last week when we talked on here, I had to feel like I almost offer an apology of sorts, trying to tell you guys the way that the information got relayed and help you try to understand where I was coming from and where my optimism was coming from that made everybody else optimistic. Nothing has changed in terms of the optimism from the Steelers. That's what I'll say. As crazy as that might sound for you guys to hear, while you see Brandon Aiyuk now at back-to-back practices for the 49ers. And by the time you guys watch or listen to this, who knows what could have happened? This saga has taken so many twists and turns. Who even knows what will be going on with the situation? But at the time of recording this, he's been at back-to-back 49ers practices. That actually has been dispelled that it was a 49ers team thing that he was wearing. It was red, but his shirt, but it was not a 49ers team gear. Who knows if there's anything to that? But until he puts pen to paper on an extension with San Francisco, I think there's going to be optimism from the Steelers side about this. And I think that stems from whether he's bluffing or not. I think they have, for whatever reason, a feeling that he wants to be here over San Francisco. Whether that's true or not, I can't speak to. I can only relay.
I would have that feeling as well. Look at what he posts online.
I can only relay what is told to me and what I've seen online. I'll be honest, like, as far as the relationship with his teammates seems to be great. The relationship with John Lynch seems to be okay. I don't know if you've paid attention to anything with Kyle Shanahan. I don't know if they've interacted. Like it doesn't.
I don't think they've talked. It's in 7 months.
Like it seems like that's not great. So is it repairable? I'm sure, but I don't think that we're there right now. Kyle Shanahan was on the radio talking about like two different situations. You got Trent Williams holding out right now, Brandon Aiyuk holding in. He mentioned how optimistic they were in talking to Trent Williams' agency about getting something done and getting him back on the field. With Brandon Aiyuk, he said everything's up in the air. Like all options are on the table, which really all options are not on the table. He's either going to stay in San Francisco or play in Pittsburgh. Hopefully we get a resolution soon. That's where things stand right now. If you're asking me to make a prediction, I think he ultimately signs an extension in San Francisco. But all I'm going to say is, again, where this information came from that I've relayed, those same people, they are not pivoting. Like they are not moving off this. They are steadfast in their optimism that Brandon Aiyuk will land with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I'm looking forward to AI Smitting, twisting everything you just said into something that's going to piss off a lot of people.
How scary is that? Yeah, that's insane that is something that can happen. Kind of scary to think about. If you guys don't know what we're talking about,
never thought it was us.
Friend of the show, Eddie Provident, went through AI and made a video where I said that the Steelers were offering TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and a first-round pick to San Francisco. For Brandon
that trade would already be done, by the way, if that was the case. Like Brandon Aiyuk would be a Steeler if that was going to be the trade.
Don't ask how we got him. Don't ask how we got him, but we got him here.
What do you think about a guy? I mean, we talked about him at a ton this summer. And at one point, you said this was your guy who you think is going to be the receiver that they sign. What do you think about a guy like Michael Thomas, still a free agent? Not really going anywhere, it seems like. Do you think they would be interested in bringing him in?
I think if he was healthy, this just sounds stupid because if he was healthy, he's not looking for a job right now.
Yeah,
we know what he was. But at his best, I think he's a great fit. But where he's at right now, he's kind of over the last few years when he's been able to play, he's been primarily taking snaps in the slot. Does that really jive with what they're looking for? Taking away snaps from Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson in the slot. I don't know. As depth, I don't think it could hurt, but I don't know if he's probably like a last resort. Obviously, I'm the one that put out there that they've touched base. I know that they have. Was it anything more than just kind of seeing where he was at health wise, or I don't know. Maybe they could bring him in and just see how that ankle looks. But I'll be honest. Far more likely, in my opinion, is a reunion with Juju Smith-Schuster.
Really? Like is this based off things you heard or just vibes?
Listen, as soon as he was cut, I put this out there on Twitter, and then people ended up texting me it as a joke. But legitimately, two people that cover the team had reached out to me and said, "Yeah, the Steelers are going to kick the tires on this." Before that happened, before people started texting,
I thought I didn't say anything on Twitter. Not that anybody cares, but I immediately thought, would I do it? Probably not. Would the Steelers do it? Maybe.
Again,
I think that healthy. Juju also fits the type of receiver of what they're looking for as far as like good blocker, like tough.
Well, that's what I was just saying
for that type of football. Like I just think it kind of fits.
At his best, Juju would be a great power slot in Arthur Smith's offense. Exactly what he's looking for. Because of the way that he can block, the physical nature, the way that he gets mismatches in the slot. But that's not where he is. That knee is cooked. I mean, this dude's only 27, and his knees are probably worse than mine. So I don't know what's left in the tank, but it wouldn't surprise me if they miss out on Brandon Aiyuk, and that's where they turn. It's not where I want them to turn. I would much rather, again, look to that Houston Texans receiving room. Is it Xavier Hutchinson that gets cut? Noah Brown, Robert Woods. Robert Woods and Juju are probably pretty similar with where they are physically. Robert Woods for age reasons, Juju because of his knee. But there's intriguing names in Houston. There's intriguing names potentially in Green Bay that are going to be on the bubble. I don't know. There's different directions that I would look before Juju or Michael Thomas. I think Juju, if you asked me right now, to tell you the name that the Steelers are going to land outside the organization to add to this receiving group. It's Juju.
Man, that would be headlines. That'd be interesting. I would be interesting.
He get his number back from Calvin.
About that. That's true. That's good. Maybe he goes back to his USC day. Or no, what was his USC number? 9?
Yeah.
Who's number 9 right now? Boswell. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what number he would pick. That'd be interesting. I don't know. That would be. While I don't think that that's the best thing for the Steelers as far as like talent goes, I think it's very realistic as far as fit with the receiver and realistic options. I think that those two worlds could collide.
Yeah, if you feel good about Calvin or Roman playing outside, then I think it could make sense. But that's another one. Like he plays in the slot. Like how are you're comfortable enough saying Pickens and Van Jefferson are our only 2 guys on the outside? Like I don't know, that just seems odd to me.
I mean, realistically, Pickens is going to be our only guy on the outside that they're only going to throw to him.
Yeah, they're going to play a lot of 12 and 13 personnel. Yeah, sure.
I mean, they might as well just
be one wide receiver on the field quite a bit.
They might as well just split out Pat on the outside as well.
It's going to happen at times.
That's another thing that I feel like we needed to mention is that they're going to keep probably only 5 wide receivers because of how many tight ends they could keep. Like they could keep 4.
Yeah.
And if you're counting Connor Hayward as a tight end or a fullback, whatever you want to say, like he's one of the guys. Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, and then like Michael Pruitt is probably the 4th one that I'd keep. But I think that there's 4 realistic options that you have there that is more valuable than any of the options that you're looking for at that receiver position. Like if you look at the receivers on the bubble, I would take any of the tight ends over the receivers.
I agree. And I think they're going to see 4 make the roster. I think you're only going 5 receivers, 4 tight ends.
I think that's a smart move, especially because of how invaluable, so to speak, like obviously receivers are still valuable. We're trying to improve the room right now, trying to trade for Brandon Aiyuk. But as far as just like what to expect from the Steelers offense, how they're going to use their receivers, I don't think a 6th wide receiver is that valuable.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's going to be 5, and I think that 5th one's currently not on the roster. That's how I feel about it. That hasn't
I'm
changed.
going for guys that are on other teams right now. My pick is that are realistic. Obviously, there's some that are not realistic, but realistic, I would probably say Xavier Hutchinson would be my guy.
I'll be honest. He's good. Like I don't know how many people were watching him specifically in that preseason game against the Steelers. He's a good player.
Well, that's why I don't think the Texans fans, I hope they realize the luxury they have at receiver right now.
I feel like the guy that I wanted in free agency was Noah Brown for the Steelers, and then the Texans re-signed him just to like go and get everybody. Then they traded for Stephon Diggs, traded for Ben Skowronek. Like why? Why do they need 10 NFL receivers? So something's got to give. Hopefully Xavier Hutchinson is the odd guy out because I'd love to add him.
While they signed a bunch of wide receiver 3 and 4s, we signed a bunch of wide receiver 6s.
Yes. Yeah. Who we thought were like 4s, but then we saw them play football.
We saw them play. Saw them try to catch a punt. I mean, there was all sorts of stuff that happened.
Yeah, not good. I think that's it. Everybody, if you want to get some Around the 412 merch, linked in the description for that. Everything Custom Designs, our friend Haley Wagner. I'll just tell you about them. Need a custom t-shirt, hoodie, tumbler? Stop what you're doing. Don't go anywhere else. Check out the link in the description. Everything Custom Designs, our friend Haley Wagner, small business. She can do all that for you. She even does Around the 412 merch, t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeve tees, bunch of different stuff. I even got a tumbler from her as well. So go check out the link in the description. Goes directly to her Facebook page. All of her stuff can be found there. Again, Everything Custom Designs. Haley Wagner, she does great work. Can't recommend her enough. Go check it out. So t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeves. We're not that far away from that time of year for hoodie weather. I know I'm looking forward to it. I know Tyler's a big hoodie and shorts guy as well. So be sure to go get one of those. Our shorts, DC4L Customs, also the link to that in the description. Link for Game Changers and Pick 6 in the description. Save $10 using code AT412 at checkout. And also rocking around the 412 year 7. We've raised over $36,000 Since doing that, we've raised over $600 this year since starting the mission. Every single penny goes directly to providing Christmas to kids in the 724 and 412 area codes the last 2 years. And going forward, we've been partnering up with the East Rochester Salvation Army. If you guys are familiar with the Christmas mission, their angel tree that they do every single year, we've been helping out with that as well over the last couple of years. We'll continue doing that. Very excited about doing that. So get involved. Anybody that donates will be eligible to win prizes that are related to Pittsburgh sports. Go figure. So get involved with that. You have plenty of time. We'll be running that until like a week before, maybe 2 weeks before Christmas. So be sure to go and do that. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you are here on YouTube, hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about, what you're excited about in the second preseason game. If you're listening or watching after, let us know what you thought about what you saw in the second preseason game as well. Give us a receiver that you think is going to be added to the roster if you feel like there is an addition from the outside still coming. So hit us in the comments with that. Any questions for a future episode, be sure to hit us with those as well. If you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there. Just search Around the 412 and then follow us on everything at Around the 412. Literally that simple on everything. Just type in Around the 412. You will find your boys. For Tyler, for Smitty, this has been the Around the 412 Steelers show. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.